Hey, HorseCenter fans, we are here for a holiday edition of HorseCenter, Matt, and we are previewing some of the biggest races of the weekend.
It's the Thanksgiving edition of HorseCenter, and to thank all you HorseCenter fans, Brian and I have picks for some of the big races. We got some long shot specials.
Absolutely. We're talking Clark Handicap, a very good edition of the Kentucky Jockey Club, the Comely, the Goldenrod. And best of all, Matt, we're going to jump into the first future wager for Kentucky Derby 2019. Watch it all right here on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the fantastic pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm really good, Brian. It's Thanksgiving coming up, so we got a holiday edition of HorseCenter. The two big turkeys, Brian and Matt, bringing you the show.
Two big turkeys indeed, Matt. Just don't stuff me more than I usually get stuffed this week. Hey, it is a good week of racing, though, Matt. So let's talk about some big races this weekend, the holiday weekend. We're going to talk about Kentucky. We're going to talk about New York. And we are going to talk a little bit about this first future wager that's come out. So that's exciting. But let's start with the races that will happen this week, Matt. And I think the biggest is the Grade 1 Clark, and that is Friday at Churchill Downs. Matt, as you handicap this race, it's hard to look past the favorite being Seeking the Soul.
Yeah, that's true, Brian. The Clark drew a field of 8. Seeking the Soul is looking to repeat his victory in the race last year, coming off his performance in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, where he ran a really nice second place behind a horse that nobody was going to catch in City of Light. He had a little bit of trouble in the race, Seeking the Soul. Churchill Downs is his home base. He loves the track. It's hard to knock him, except, Brian, Seeking the Soul is the kind of horse that you and I have liked at big odds in some of these races. And I don't know, I'm not excited to take him as what could be a really short favorite.
Yeah, Matt, I think he will be under 2-1 in this spot, but there's good reasons for everything you mentioned. There is a little bit of speed in here, but he's certainly a good horse at Churchill Downs, the rallying son of Perfect Soul. He's never been better for trainer Dallas Stewart. As you said, this is his home base, but if you look at his recent performances at Churchill, he certainly likes his home base. He won the Clark 3 Churchill Downs starts ago. He won the Clark, and I think he beat a better field doing it last year, Matt. And then his 2 most recent starts also came at Churchill Downs after not racing here most of this year. That was a nice win in the ACAC, and then, as you said, a good rallying second in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. By no means was he close to the winner that day, but he was much the best of the rest. But, of course, we want to look for other options besides a horse who's going to be 7-5 or so, Matt. So the horse that ran third that day, Bravazzo, he dances every dance. So it only makes sense that Bravazzo would be dancing on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Brian, I actually like Bravazzo in here. Bravazzo's going to be my pick. He, like you said, he's danced every dance, and those last 7 dances for Bravazzo have been in Grade 1 races. I know the Clark is a Grade 1 also, but I feel like Bravazzo's getting a little bit of class relief in terms of the kind of Grade 1s that he's been running in before. I'm going with Bravazzo because of what I said before. I don't like the odds on Seeking the Soul. I like the fact that Bravazzo's going to be 3rd choice, maybe 4th choice in there. And I love the rider switch to Joel Rosario in here. Nobody's better in the big races than Rosario. And he's really good bringing horses from off the pace and rating horses. So I'm going to take a shot with Bravazzo.
Okay, I'm not with you on this one, Matt. Although Bravazzo makes a lot of sense. I think you'll probably get the third choice in here, coming off that third place finish in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. I just look at that form, and he's had a lot of races, as we already talked about, but he's lost about 8 in a row, I think it is now. Of course, he's run some good ones. The Preakness was very good. The Haskell, the Travers, the Dirt Mile, those were all good performances. He's thrown in a few clunkers along the way. The Penn Derby certainly was one of them. But I just don't know he breaks through here against older horses to win this race. I think the bigger threat to win the race is another Kentucky horse, and that's from the barn of Brad Cox. And Brad Cox, of course, has been winning stakes races left and right. And in Leofric, I think he's got a really nice developing Son of Candy ride. He's getting better with age. And he's just been getting better all year. He's been consistent all year, Matt, but he's also getting better. He's coming off a hard-knocking win last time in the Fayette after a very good performance at Saratoga, a very good performance before that at West Virginia. I think he might be able to stalk the speed in here, get first jump, and be very dangerous to upset Seeking the Soul. The horse he beat in the Fayette in a photo, Prime Attraction, might need to show more speed from the rail, but he's certainly a threat in here. He's a horse who's been running against Accelerate a lot of late. But I'll tell you what, Matt, I'm looking to get some horses for underneath, and the horse I think that could surprise here at big odds is Hawakam. Hawakam's run big races before, and he's run big races at Churchill Downs. In fact, this year at Oaklawn Park, he won the Razorback over Leofric. So those odds on the two will be far different this time, since Hawakam is not coming in the best of form. But he's training well back at Churchill Downs. I think he can rally here. You know, you got Hentz, who's also a threat to rally. You got Luch adding to the speed. But for me, Matt, I'm going to use Hawakam under Seeking the Soul, Leofric, my top two picks. Maybe Bravazzo, Prime Traction in there a little bit, but I'm hoping Hawakam gets in.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Brian, Leofric is, super consistent, 13 races, 7 wins, 1 second, 3/3. So he's only been out of the money twice in his career. Interesting race in there. I think you got to either try and beat Seeking the Soul, or like you're doing, trying to get a big price in the trifecta.
Okay, interesting. I think Matt and I agree that Seeking the Soul is the horse to beat. I think Leofric's the most likely to do it. Matt likes Bravazzo quite a bit, the 3-year-old running against Holder. I'm going to throw Hawakam in as a long shot to get into one of those superfecta, trifecta, exacta spots. That's our Clark preview. Stay tuned for more from Churchill Downs. The Clark, the day after Thanksgiving, really kicks things off at Churchill Downs this weekend, Matt. But the two-year-olds are starting to get exciting as we look forward to big races like the Kentucky Derby, the Kentucky Oaks, and I'll tell you what, the Kentucky Jockey Club and the Goldenrod. This year, I think even more than most, are add a little importance to the division, coming off of a Churchill Downs Breeders' Cup and then looking ahead to the Spring Classics. And for my money, the most interesting race of the weekend, Matt, is actually the 2-year-old males, the Kentucky Jockey Club. Matt Nixco was a long shot in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. He was a long shot in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He will be a long shot no longer on Saturday at Churchill Downs.
Well, that's for sure. He's certainly earned everybody's respect in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile after that big long shot victory heading into it when he was 71, and he was again another big price at Churchill Downs for the Breeders' Cup and ran a great race. But you're right, he's not going to be a favorite anymore. And hats off to Nick Sco. But it's going to be a big field expected for the Kentucky Jockey Club, and it's a race that every year usually generates a lot of Derby chatter as we head to the turn of the calendar for the actual Derby year. We've also got the 3rd place horse, Brian, from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in Signalman. in the race also. He was a big price in there. Signalman is actually going to be my pick in there. The owner of one of the owners of Signalman is a big HorseCenter fan, so I'm going with him in that race. Pletcher's got one in there, King for a Day, and Uncle Mo. So that's my pick. Brian, who do you like in there?
Yeah, Matt. Well, I was going to ask you, of course, Nick Sco will be the favorite now, and I think Nick Sco has become a little bit of a fan favorite after his two long shot performances, first in the Breeders' Futurity and then second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I was going to ask you, is it as simple as just going Nick Sco and Signalman again? Of course, they ran 1-2 in Keeneland and then came back and ran 2-3 behind Gain winner in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But I'm with you. Signalman, yeah, he's my top pick as well. He's a big, giant 2-year-old out of the Kenny McPeek barn. Kenny McPeek 2-year-olds have really been running this year. And I think Signalman is a horse to look at. I thought he ran against the bias at Keeneland when Nick Sco went wire to wire there. And then he really came from the clouds and was the only horse who really was close to the top two in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Take another look at it. Signalman ran a very good race that day. I think there is some speed in here. You mentioned King for a Day from the Pletcher barn. It's coming out of just a maiden, but it was a pretty fast maiden win where he showed the pace there in New York. And then you got to mention Dumpf, of course. Dumpf, I'm not sure about the name, Matt, but his first two performances, Penn National and then here at Churchill Downs, have been eye-catching. So Dumpf, he's trained by Mike Maker now, the son of Temple City, is an interesting horse. But I think maybe another horse who might be out there on or near the lead. So with that speed, I think this might actually set up for Signalman to turn the tables and beat Nick Sco this time. And of course, the odds are going to be right on Signalman. I think Dumpf gets bet. I think King for a Day gets bet. I could see Signalman being the fourth choice in here, Matt. And we haven't mentioned the turf to dirt angle with Current, a son of Curlin, who's a nice turf horse.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, even though I really respect what Nick Sco has done in the last two races, like I said about Seeking the Soul, I just can't take him as a solid favorite.
I echo your statements, Matt, because what Nick Sco has done the last two starts is really big for trainer Ben Colebrook, the Maryland-bred son of Painter. So by all means, he is the real deal. But as a clear favorite in here, it might be time to play against Nick Sco. And Signalman is a very interesting horse from the Kenny McPeek barn. Speaking of Kenny McPeek, as we look at the goldenrod, Matt, you talked me into trying to beat Seeking the Soul and Nick Sco a little bit in our first two races on the preview show here. I don't think you're going to be able to do it, though, with the third horse, because when I look at this goldenrod, I look at Restless Rider, and then the rest of the horses, the rest of the past performances on this race look a little blurry, because Restless Rider, for me, Matt, is a clear standout.
Yes, I feel the same way, Brian. Another one, as you said, from the Kenny McPeek barn with lots of impressive performances in her PPs, and I just don't think, looking at the probables for the race, I just don't see anybody that's going to beat that horse.
Yeah, Restless Rider really has been terrific no matter where she's run. Of course, 3 of her 5 races have come here at Churchill Downs. She was awesome in winning both her maiden and then especially the Debutante Stakes earlier this year. She went on the road. She was second in this Grade 1 Spinaway up in New York. She was a nice, impressive winner of the Alcia Baiades at Keeneland. And then she was the best of the rest, went second to Jaywalk in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies back here at Churchill. So she's good. I think she only gets better. Like I said, the Daughter of Distorted Humor is a major player, one of the best in the division, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So for me, Matt, she's a single. The horses that ran second and third to her at Keeneland in the Alcia Baiades, Reflect and Meadow Driver in here. Gold Credits undefeated in 1 start. Champagne Anyone has won 2 in a row for Ian Wilkes and ran a nice, sneaky good race last time. Maybe she would be my second pick, but for me, I think it's a single in multi-race wagers in the Goldenrod with Restless Rider. Hey, Matt, I think the biggest races of the weekend are Churchill Downs. I won't be there, though, because I will be in New York with you the day after Thanksgiving. I see my dad and his family Thursday for Thanksgiving, but the day after, I'm with you at the Big A. 4 stakes races. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be with you. I'm excited to be at the Big A. And of the 4 stakes races, I think the most interesting, or the one that could lead to the most for the future, is the Comely, a 1.8 miles for 3-year-old fillies.
Yeah, Brian, the Jersey Breds are getting together, you and I, and heading out to the Big A. Yeah, the field's been drawn for the race on Friday. There's 8 3-year-old fillies in there. They're going the 1.8 miles at Aqueduct. It's a race that looks like it's got a good bit of speed in there. There's a horse named Blamed in there that ran second in the Ravens run off a layoff. The first time was running for trainer Bill Mott. Interesting horse that was tearing things up in New Mexico. Won 5 races in a row there. Fast filly. Kind of had me thinking of Pepper's Pride a little bit, but was transferred to Bill Mott and ran a big one in the Ravens run at Keeneland. Brad Cox has got a nice one in there also, named Remedy, another speedy type who has been, as we talked about earlier with Brad Cox, this is another horse that's been super consistent, run really well. Last out was second in the Remington Park Oaks after setting the pace. So a lot of speed in there. Brian, I'm going to give you my pick. I got a long shot in here, Brian, because those 2 may be the top 2 choices, and they possibly are going to knock heads. I'm going with a horse named Indy Union, Brian, for Jeremiah Engelhardt, is a closer who won an allowance race at Belmont Park in really nice fashion. And Jeremiah can be very, very dangerous. So I'm going with Indy Union. The name tells you a little bit. She's a daughter of Union Rags out of AP Indy mare. So the 1.8 miles should be no problem.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. In handicapping all these races that we're talking about today on HorseCenter, I can't tell you how many times I came across a broodmare out of AP Indy, and here's another one. In the Union, you're dead on right in that 9 furlong should be right up her alley, and we've seen the Comely kind of fall apart, and long shot rattlers have won this race before, so it certainly could happen again. I like you taking a stand with this long shot, Matt. I'm gonna mention a few others here. Pletcher's got that Albero Bello filly who could be better than she showed last time. She's got some speed as well, which makes your life better for your long shot pick. War Cabinet, turf to dirt for Shug. She's been a little disappointing on the turf since coming over. Maybe she takes to the dirt. Shug's taking a swing there. And what about Split Time, Matt? Another one that could be picking up some pieces. Trainer Linda Rice has this New York bred filly. She's as consistent as the day is long, and she looks like she's better than ever as well. So Split Time, I think, is another one that could upset the apple cart. Remedy's gotten very good for trainer Brad Cox. Last 2 starts were her best 2 yet. So I think she is a threat, the daughter of Creative Cause. But I'll tell you what, Matt, I don't know how good Blamed is. And I'm not gonna jump into this race from a betting standpoint. I'll be more dipping my toes in a little bit, because I think Blamed has potential to be really good, and Bill Mott is great at developing fillies, as we've seen time and time over again. This is a Maryland-bred daughter who's gone to New Mexico, went to New Mexico for her first 6 starts. They were all good after running second to a nice horse in her first start at Zia Park. That's the first time I've ever said that. She's just rattled off 5 straight wins, like you said. and they were impressive. And when she stretched out, they were even more impressive. The Daughter of Blame is bred for a distance. And a mile and eighth, I think, might be her game in the future as a real handicap mare for Belmont. The Raven Run, she had a lot of time off, and the Raven Run was a huge performance. 7 furlongs, she showed a ton of speed, and she was pressured, and she held on well to be second. Of course, that performance was flattered when Shamrock Rose came back to upset the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint. So I respect several horses in here, including your long shot, but part of me just wants to sit back and see just how good Blamed is, because I think she could be a grade 1 horse next year.
Yeah, Brian, and we're going to sit back and take a look at the Aqueduct track and see if it's going to continue playing the way it has been. As someone who watches the New York races every day, Aqueduct is in its kind of late fall mode where the track is pretty deep and it's pretty tiring, and it's producing what appear to be slow times. So if the track is like that, it's going to be hard for some of these horses that we mentioned to carry their speed for 9 furlongs.
That's good information, Matt, and I think an interesting long shot pick on your part in Indy Union. Hey, Matt, we looked at some of the biggest races of this holiday weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, Churchill Downs and Aqueduct. But of course, we need to talk about the first Kentucky Derby future wager of the 2019 season. Matt, it starts Thursday. It runs through Sunday. You can bet win. You can bet exacta. They have a new feature this year. All fillies is one of the options. And that would make the all button on every horse not listed all other males. So you got 22 horses, and it's Bob Baffert centric, including maybe 3 favorites in Game Winner, Coliseum, and Improbable.
Yeah, Brian, I was going to say, I thought you got the name of the wager wrong, because we may as well call it the Bob Baffert future wager here. He's there. There are seven, Brian, Bob Baffert horses in those 22 individual listings. Let me just rattle them off really fast with the morning line odds. Game Winners 8-1. Roadster, the Buzz horse earlier in the summer, is 30-1. By the way, I didn't realize and just found out that Roadster had throat surgery following the disappointing performance in the Del Mar Futurity. So that may have taken care of whatever was going on with that horse. Improbable, 10-1. Coliseum, 15-1. And Mucho Gusto, the winner of the Bob Hope recently, 20-1. 7 Bafferts, Brian. Only 1 Pletcher in there.
Yeah, that's a little surprising, the Pletcher part of that equation. But of course, you're looking at these Bafferts, they're all interesting, frankly, Matt. Baffert has been quoted as saying, well, he doesn't have any justifies in the barn. But on the other hand, Game Winner was the dominant 2-year-old of this year, and there's no reason, how good has Sire's Candy Ride become? There's no reason to expect Game Winner, another AP Indy broodmare, by the way, has every reason to develop into a top 3-year-old. And I think Coliseum is the buzz horse now, Matt. The son of Tappet for Godolphin was very impressive. People were waiting for his unveiling. It came this past weekend with a big win out at Del Mar. Improbable was super duper in winning at Churchill Downs on the Breeders' Cup undercard. So yeah, Baffert's loaded. I'm not sure what kind of odds. Maybe we shop around a little bit, but with the all button, which has become a very clear favorite in recent years this time. Of course, Justify was an all horse last year. They're going to be the favorite again. So even if you like Game Winner, you might have some interesting win odds. Another thing I want people to think about is there are a bunch of horses that are running in the Kentucky Jockey Club this weekend, but only if you see something, where the horse loses, are you going to get good odds on them? Because if Nick Sco, for instance, wins nicely here, his odds are really going to dip. On the other hand, the Remsen is next weekend, so we don't know what's going to happen in the Remsen as we're betting this. So if you like horses very interesting horses, mind you, like Code of Honor for Shug McGahee, or the Parks. Who knows how good the horse from Parks is, Matt. Maximus Mischief looks like truly any kind after his first few races. I'm not sure if Acoma is going to show up in the Remsen, but if he does, he's another very interesting horse. So if you really like one of the Remsen horses, that might be a good win wager here, because they won't be affected by what they do in the Remsen in these odds, Matt.
Yeah, and let's look back to last year for a second and talk about Justify, who at this time last year in Kentucky Derby Future Wager 1, we didn't even know existed, and we know what he went on to do and won the Derby as a big favorite. But there were a couple ways that you could have ended up making a lot better money on Justify. And one of them we haven't mentioned is the Sire Wager, which is also available in this future pool. As a son of Scat Daddy, the Sire Wager paid $54 last year when Justify won the race. So that was a way to leverage a horse you didn't know about. And then there's also the 24 button, the all other horses to use in this Kentucky Derby Future Pool 1, which is something that I like to do. I like to take some horses from the 22 that are listed and box them with all others. So $2 bet, that's a $4 wager total. Take some of them and box them. And Brian, 4 of the last 5 years, the all button has been part of the Kentucky Derby exacta. Last year, you were able to get a good price if you made that wager. Last year, I bet Good Magic, who finished second in the Kentucky Derby, with the 24, which of course got you Justify, and that ended up paying $50-some, but in the past 5 years, 4 times the 24 has come in the exacta, and some of the payoffs have been up to in the hundreds of dollars in there. I like to do it in this first future wager because you get so many horses in there. Later on in when it gets to be 2019 in the later pools, we got a much better idea about horses that might be in the field. So particularly in here, I think last year only 7 horses from the individuals in Pool 1 made it to the Derby field. And that's a big reason why you want to use that number 24, all others, in the exacta.
Yeah, Matt, I hope you're not talking this up too much where everybody bets it, but I think you're dead on again, because I don't like the all button. It's no fun if we're betting to win. All is going to be, they've been low the last few years, and I expect them to be relatively low again this year if you're betting to win. But on the other hand, exactas, yeah, it makes a heck of a lot of sense, because there are a lot of good horses right now in that all button, or a lot of horses that we don't know are good yet that will be good, like Justify, for instance. So yeah, as Matt said, the all button is consistently getting into the exacta. And even if they run 1-2, they keep going down until you get that third horse. So you could have your horse finish third or fourth and still hit the exacta if the all horses are first and second, or first, second, and third, for instance. So I think it is a very smart play to get that all button into the exacta boxes, like Matt says. I'm still looking for some horses of interest in here, Matt. Instagram is 10-1 on the morning line, and he's been much talked about and was very impressive for Jerry Hollendorfer. But at those type of odds, maybe he drifts up a little bit. I'm not sure, but I have no idea if he's going to be a distance horse, and I don't know how he will come back at 3. So for me, betting a horse like Instagram doesn't make a lot of sense in here. The other hand, there's a horse, for instance, like Mucho, who I thought was a very impressive looking individual, son of Blame, for Bill Mott. Sounds just like the filly Blame from the Comely. Mucho looks like a horse who should only get better with distance. He's never been at distance. And of course, he was sidelined. So that's why we're getting 50-1 morning line here in the Future Wager. But I really do think he's a horse with a lot of potential. So if he can get healthy and get those preps in for next year's Derby, I would love to throw Mucho in at huge odds in here, because I think horses like that can make this wager a big windfall for you, Matt. I like your exacta plays. I'm going to throw in a few of those myself.
Yeah, and if we're looking for a couple of other horses who clearly will get overlooked behind the 7 Baffert horses, Cairo Cat is one of them, an impressive winner of the Iroquois. Could be a horse that's going to get better. I don't think the distance is going to matter. And 30-1 morning line, I think we'll get a lot more than that on that horse. And Code of Honor that you mentioned also, Brian, another horse where distance doesn't concern me, and 20-1 morning line. But again, I think we're going to get more than that on that horse.
Yeah, I mentioned the Remsen earlier as a race that won't affect these odds, which I think is a positive. Yep. And both Code of Honor and Maximus Mischief, I think, are very interesting horses to throw in. And if they win the Remsen big, they'll become one of the winter book favorites. But right now, they're 20-1, 30-1 on this morning line. So by all means, take a look at this Future Wager. There are ways to win money on this bet for sure. That's another HorseCenter, Matt. Thank you for joining me, co-hosting with me on Thanksgiving weekend. I'm going to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you in a few days. More importantly than that, Matt, even more importantly than that, I want to wish all of you out there, everybody that watches every week or just tuning in this time, very happy Thanksgiving from all of us here at HorseCenter. Need to thank our sponsor, Matt, the best contest site out there, Derby Wars. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do it right here at Horse Racing Nation. Matt, can I get a parting shot from you today, sir?
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you, Brian. I want to wish all of our HorseCenter fans happy Thanksgiving. You and I are both very thankful that we have such a loyal audience because we love doing the show for all you guys. And as always, I want to thank our friend Brett Workman for putting together the show.
Happy Thanksgiving to Brett. Matt are looking at Lucky Philly. Sooner Schooner rattled off a nice workout, their first workout in a while at Churchill Downs on Sunday. We're looking forward to seeing both her and Pain Is My Gain, the Derby Day racing horses, down in New Orleans soon. Folks, thanks for watching HorseCenter. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.